Hello, my dear friends of the Roland TR8. I want to make a little beat making tutorial here and talk about different scales, timing and feel and the groove that you can make with this beautiful machine. And maybe you have run into the same problems I have when I started out making beats. Maybe you want to practice some finger drumming and you have this nice groove in your head that you're trying to put in the machine, and it goes a little something like this. Maybe it's not loud enough, wait. Something like that, you want to program this and then you type in all the notes and then you end up getting something like this. I hope this is loud enough. I'm going to turn the level up a little bit. Now, what you had in mind sounded like this. What you got was this. It's not a huge difference, but if you listen closely, it's not what you wanted. You wanted, and then you get, okay. What you wanted to get was this. I'm going to switch back. What you got was not. Okay, look at these changes here. When I switch, this is scale number 3, right? That's a 4/4. Pattern 4, scale number 1, triplet scale. So, if you have an idea in your head that you want to put in the machine, make sure you're on the right scale to get the groove that you really want. Because if you don't, it's not really satisfying and you end up getting these straight and kind of boring grooves, and actually they don't really groove at all. It's just more of less of a metronome that you're programming then. Scales is an important issue with all kinds of drum machines, and when it comes to triplets, it's getting a bit complicated, and many people don't even use triplets. They end up making compromises with themselves, and they end up using patterns like this when they actually wanted this. Now, to explain this a little better, how do you know when you have a triplet beat and when do you have a 4/4 beat, a straight beat? There are examples where it's really easy to detect just by counting along. For example, I can play this beat for you, and I'm going to switch to this empty instrument here. I have no notes laid in here because I want you to focus on something which is the downbeats. These lights that are illuminated here, 1, 5, 9, 13, that's the downbeats for the scale you're choosing. So when you count a beat that's made using this scale, you would count this 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and each quarter note is divided by 4. So one step on this measure is a 16th notes. Okay, when you're using a different scale, like I'm using on this pattern here, you can see that you also count 1, 2, 3, 4, but each quarter note is not divided by 4 but only by 3. And that gives you a totally different feel and groove. And that's important to keep in mind when you want the idea that you have in your mind put out in the machine, right? if that's how you want it to sound, don't go for a 4/4 measure, because it just won't happen. You cannot program this type of beat in a 4/4, because you would need a step key somewhere in between 2 and 3. And maybe even somewhere in between 3 and 4. They just don't exist. So you can't do it. If you look at these highlighted keys here, there's also one thing that's really confusing in the TR-8. And that's that when you switch to a triplet scale, the machine gives you 16 steps. And triplets don't work on 16 steps. They work on 12 steps, because each quarter note, like I said, is divided by 3, not by 4. So when you want to program triplet beats accurately, you need to use last step and cut down the length from 16 to 12. And only if you do this, only when you're doing this, the value for tempo in the display will be the correct value for the beat you're making. Because that's something that Roland just, maybe because they wanted to save money or something, just didn't do. Maybe they wanted to give you these extra 4 steps so you can experiment and play around and stuff. But that's very confusing, because actually triplet scales work on 12 steps only, not on 16. Okay, that explains the difference between scale number 3 and scale number 1. Now, what are scales 2 and 4? They are basically just the same. To show you some easy examples, so that you can easily detect whether it's a 4/4 measure or a 3/4. I'm going to play this example for you here. When you count this, you can see that the cursor light runs through all the 16 steps, right? And you count this 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can easily follow all the downbeats in this beat as indicated by the lights. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. When you have a pattern like this, you're still on scale number 3, only I cut down the length here to 12 steps. And I can also make a triplet beat using scale number 3. And this is also very easy to detect, because downbeat is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But with another pattern like this, using a triplet scale, but how do I count this? Maybe I make it a little faster. This is 2 bars, by the way, not only 1. This is A and B. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Very confusing. How come I count this 1, 2, 3, 4 when it's a triplet beat? Well, that's because, like I just said, each quarter note is divided by 3. That gives it a different resolution. The downbeats, there are still 4 downbeats in a measure though. And so I have to not only focus on the downbeats to find out whether this is a 4/4 or a 3/4, I have to focus on the resolution of steps in between the downbeats, so that I can find out whether it's a triplet or a 4/4. And that's very confusing for many people. Okay, so please always keep in mind when using a triplet scale to cut down the length to 12. Only if you cut down the length, the tempo will be correct. Difference between scale 1 and 2 is just one thing. If you look here, again, I'm going to, the lights that are indicated here, they have 6 steps from one downbeat to another, not only 3. It's twice the value, so you get twice the resolution, which means that you can in between quarter notes, not only put in 3 notes, but 6. So you get faster notes. And that makes sense when you want some fast hitting hi-hats for trap style music or something like that. It's the same with measures, with scales 3 and 4. The only difference here is also just the resolution. Scale 3 is divided by 4 per quarter note. Scale 4 is divided by 8. That's twice the amount. So the notes you put in between downbeats can be twice as fast. And that's the only difference. If I'm using scale number 4, actually on a whole bar of 16 steps, I only get half a measure. I would count this 1, 2, and then switching over to B, 3, 4. And per quarter note, I get 8 steps that I can use per quarter note. On scale number 3, only 4 steps per quarter note. And 1 bar is already 1 full measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it repeats. So that's very important to know. And that's how you use these scales in an accurate way. And that's how you can detect what kind of groove you really want. And if the groove you want to program doesn't work on a 4/4 scale, then go ahead, change the scale until you get the result that you really want. Don't let the machine tell you what to do. Tell the machine what it should do. All right? Okay. Hope that helps. If you have any more questions, or if I didn't make anything clear enough, then just get back to me, ask me your questions, and I'll try to answer as good as I can. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.